That's what it's all about.
Happy hump day. Happy Wednesday. Y'all, we have made it past Wisconsin, which we knew that we would. But before we dive into everything, be sure to go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any content. This is the Clemson Dynasty. We are one of the shows here on the Bama Standard YouTube network. And so we're definitely happy to have those who have been here before. And then those who are new, we really appreciate your support. We always tell the audience to hit up the live chat, even if you're a fan of another school. We like to, just kind of show some love to you as well. But my name is Sishi. I'm the host here, and we do have two awesome co-hosts. But before I introduce them, I have to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, Workspace Solutions. So we always tell you that if you need personally or from a business perspective to enhance your digital presence, or if you need a marketing team, just feel free to contact them. Visit their website, which we have in the banner below. And if you have to reach out to them, let them know that we sent you there. So be sure to visit workspacepros.com. But then also, I know that we typically talk about Whitwell Sports towards the end, which we'll bring them up again later. But I wanted to mention this now as people are starting to, kind of stream in, that we're going to actually be doing a giveaway tonight on this particular episode of the Clemson Dynasty. So it's basically brought to you by whitwellsports.com. We always talk about the title towel. We tell you that your game day is not the same without one. I know that a lot of you have already purchased one before the season started, but tonight we're going to give away one free title towel. So in order to win it, all you have to do is just be a top fan in our live chat tonight. That's going to require you to sign in. So even if you have a whatever type of YouTube, Gmail, whatever type of account that you have, just be active in the chat, and we'll have our moderator in there looking at, whoever is the top fan. Just engage. Don't say anything stupid because a lot of them get blocked. But just engage, and we will announce the lucky winner towards the end, and you will have to provide your email address in the chat. So just make sure that you're aware of that, if you're comfortable with that. But like I said, we have two of the best co-hosts here. We're very knowledgeable here, and we like to, kind of dive into facts and not just talk on the Clemson Dynasty. So I want to introduce Dan James IV. He is the lead recruiting analyst for the Bama Standard Network. A lot of you are familiar with him from one of our Tuesday night shows, The Final Whistle. He's the go-to guy if you have any questions regarding current recruits, current players, former players, even not just football, but basketball, any other sports. Just drop your questions in the live chat, and we will try to address them towards the end. And then we also have Hannah Stevens. She is not a new face anymore to the Clemson Dynasty. She joined after the previous season ended, and so now we get to do like a full regular season with her. And so we like to get active on this channel. So but shout out to Hannah Stevens, and she's been on a lot of college football shows. She had a radio show on ESPN Radio in Huntsville, Alabama. And then she's also on two new shows that we have here on the network. So one that airs on Monday night and one on Friday night. But we'll get into that later. So without further ado, be sure to hit up that live chat like we mentioned, and go ahead and hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. The first thing that I want to jump into, y'all. Okay, we talked about last week about Alabama and Wisconsin. I don't think any of us really saw it as a threat to lose that game, but we did see it as more of a challenge versus Western Kentucky and South Florida. Now, Alabama, of course, we won our game, and we won it, convincingly, but their starting quarterback didn't play, but still we won. But one of our opponents that we're going to be playing in another week and a half, Georgia, they played Kentucky. And I saw some things in that game that reminded me of their first game against Clemson. Now, Kentucky was their only in-conference game. And then Georgia is going to be our first in-conference game. But there were some things that I noticed, and I feel like it's very important to talk about, not just their first game against Clemson, not just the second one. I think they had Tennessee Tech, but then, of course, the one against Kentucky. So one thing that I noticed is that in all three of the games, Carson Beck and their backup Stockton, in all three games, they accounted for about 20 rushing yards. And to some people, that may not sound like a lot, but it is, when you're playing tougher teams, especially, once we play each other, that's going to matter. We talk about those QB design runs that we saw Milroe have against Wisconsin. I wasn't a big fan of that in that particular game, but it's definitely going to be important against Georgia. But there's a couple more things that I want to mention, and I want to get y'all's takes on this. So I noticed in all three of those games, so Georgia's game against Clemson, Tennessee Tech, and Kentucky, I noticed that Georgia's quarterback Beck, he wasn't sacked but one time. Like, you know what I mean? So that in itself, I'm like, okay, so something about the O-line, it could be Beck as well. He's very experienced out there. It could be him, but I do think that we should account some of that to their O-line. So that's one thing to note. But then I also noticed that in all 3 games, Georgia was able to sack the opponent's quarterback at least twice. I think in their game against Kentucky, it was 3 times. And so just to kind of speak to their defense,
Yeah, on that note, I actually got Georgia, Carson Beck. Well, no, I'm not going to say Carson Beck. Maybe the total. Georgia has been sacked. The quarterback has been sacked 8 times for 79 yards.
Well, I didn't think Beck got sacked on Saturday. Did he get sacked? I thought he had 0 sacks, 0 fumbles, and 0.
I saw he got sacked once, I believe.
Yeah, I had noticed he got no sacks.
I'll check on that, but we'll get into that. But go ahead. Yeah.
So, and let me just see what it was one time. Yeah. That was a good game though. But one thing too, another thing too, is that they haven't had more than 30 carries on the ground, Georgia, and the 30, of course, was in their game against Kentucky. I mean, they just had to get creative because I don't think they expected, Kentucky to really come with it. But one thing that I noticed too is that Clemson and Kentucky had about almost the same amount of passing attempts, but Clemson's percentage completion was actually better than Kentucky. So that kind of stood out, and it kind of spoke to certain things that we're going to get into later. But then also Kentucky was pretty solid on both sides of the ball. I honestly believe that had they done more in the air to go along with the plays on the ground, they could have actually won that game. I think the Kentucky quarterback being able to run, that kind of helped them out a little bit. But Kentucky, they had double the amount of carries on the ground than Clemson, and they almost had 4 times the number of rushing yards than Clemson. So that right there, as those who are in the chat are commenting, that right there goes to show just the game plan and how to properly strategize against a team like Georgia. The fact that Kentucky, had the amount of yards on the ground against Georgia. So that's another thing to note. And then before I toss it to y'all, another thing too, Clemson and Kentucky, they had, I believe, almost the exact same amount of total tackles against Georgia. I think it was roughly 50 or something like that. So I thought that was very interesting. Yeah. But before I go on, I want to get y'all's takes on this. Hannah, I'll start with you on this one first. What are your thoughts? I know I just said a lot, but what are your thoughts just, I guess, looking at their 3 games so far, just holistically? What are your thoughts about Georgia, and what do you think, I guess, we should be kind of preparing for?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I think for me, it is very much a place that Alabama's been in before, right? I mean, I think you have a very hyped team and they're under delivering. They have the right ingredients, but I'll say this, a lot of people have not focused on the lack of depth that they have this year, especially on offense. And I feel like, Carson Beck is a good quarterback, but he's not playing up to his potential. We've seen this with Jalen Milroe before. So it's not, and notice I didn't say Jalen Hurts, right? But for me, Carson Beck's a good quarterback, but I think he has similar issues with his offensive line. And in full transparency, Kentucky's defense played the way we thought Georgia's defense would. Yeah. I mean, Kentucky's and I'll say this too, although Kentucky lost the game and they're 0-2 so far, they are an underrated team in the SEC. I think they're a lot better than people realize. And so it's not like you can say Georgia's is that bad. As poorly as Georgia played, Kentucky is that good. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to back them up a little bit. Not saying you weren't doing a good job in what you're saying, but I just think it's very easy, especially like, for example, Alabama plays Wisconsin, okay? Alabama does really well against Wisconsin. It doesn't mean Wisconsin's that bad, but it just means Bama's that good. Reverse that with Kentucky. It's not that Georgia's the number 1 team and they barely beat Kentucky. It's just that Kentucky was a hard team to beat. And so for me, a couple of things I want to note about Georgia. Georgia has been very inconsistent. And regardless of what team you are, when you're inconsistent with how you play, their play calling, their defense, I mean, it's been lackadaisical. I don't even know if that's a word, but it just came out of my mouth. That's how I've seen them play. Statistically, they're not the same team they were 1 or 2 years ago. So for me, I love seeing a Georgia team struggle this early on because it gives them a little bit of humility before they have to play us, right? Yeah. Because Georgia's going to be a hard team to play. It doesn't matter when we play them. And, and I'll say this too about Georgia. every top 10 team is going to have times where they don't play their best. And unfortunately for Alabama last year, that was against Texas, right? That was a really big game. We lost to the what? What were they? They were the what in the championship? Right?
National.
So, yeah. So, I mean, the two teams we lost to were two of the best teams in the country. And so for me, not saying that Georgia is playing poorly, but I just wanted to reiterate that I think Kentucky is a much better team than people are giving their credit for. I just kind of want to say that a little bit as well, because it's very easy to focus on Georgia and Carson Beck. I've not been impressed with him so far. I mean, I will say this. He does have a worse offensive line than he's had before. But the reality is this: when you're a quarterback, you have to adjust. And so, just wanted to emphasize that, because I think Georgia's going to be a tough team to play next week. Don't get me wrong. But I would rather play a Georgia team that we see has any weaknesses at all, rather than going into this game and Georgia playing their best two games of the season before us and us feeling like they're unstoppable. Because what we're seeing is weaknesses on their offensive line. Thank goodness we have a defensive line that we haven't had in a couple of years. They're fast. They're aggressive. I mean, look at how we played against Wisconsin, right? I mean, whether we're going to talk about LT Overton later on in the show, but the way he has played, I think is going to be a really big opportunity to showcase what we can do against Georgia. So my three things, and I'll be quiet, are stopping their offensive line, breaking them down, which is going to put pressure on Carson Beck. But also, if we can simply run it up the middle, that's what Kentucky did. Georgia was not able to run the ball at all, executingly well, but Kentucky ran it down Georgia's throat, and that was the recipe for success almost for them.
Yeah. And Dan, what are your thoughts? What would you want to add to that?
Okay, to keep it short, I got a several good note, but one thing that I want to cover when it comes to Georgia and opponent, it's a lot of things, but it's one glaring outlier. Okay, Georgia rushing yards. Fumbles. Georgia has fumbled the ball 3 times, but lost 0, and only thrown 1 interception so far this year. So they're not turning over the ball, right? Okay. The opponents have fumbled the ball 5 times, losing 2. So Georgia winning the turnover battle, but Georgia and the opponents are very similar when it comes to rushing total. It's almost identical. They're rushing for as much as they are giving up. But let me let y'all look at this. In the red zone, this is the outlier. In the red zone, Georgia scoring opportunities. Georgia is 12 of 12 in the red zone, with 7 of those scores being touchdowns. Opponents are 3 or 4 when they get in the red zone. So Georgia getting into the red zone 3 times as much as the opponent, but Georgia has given up 0 touchdowns this year. So teams are not capitalized. That's like Kentucky. That one touchdown would have made a huge difference in that game. Teams are not, when they get in the end zone, when they get in the red zone, rarely, but they're not getting touchdowns. You know what I'm saying? So that is the difference in Georgia. That is their season. In a snapshot. So we're going to focus more on that as the week go on.
Do you feel like that could be a part? Do you think it's, I guess, partly the level of talent that Georgia has versus the opponents?
Versus the opponents that they face, yes. Like we say, someone mentioned in the comments, Kentucky and Clemson, how do they match up against each other? So Georgia's first test is going to be in 2 weeks. Yeah. If you understand. Yeah. So, we'll get more into it. It's a lot. We got a lot of time between now and then. And don't, people, followers, let's not think that same team we saw Saturday at Kentucky is going to be the same team we're going to see in Bryant-Denny Stadium. We're going to make
definitely. They probably, I feel like they were embarrassed, and they feel like they have, and then Texas is
a lot
number
of
one
coaching
now.
opportunities. Kirby's going to be balls and fire these next 2 weeks. We're gonna get Georgia's best game to date.
Well, and I'm so glad that you mentioned those stats because that's very important. And another thing to go along with that is you look at Clemson and Tennessee Tech, their starting quarterback, both had negative rushing yards. They tried to run the ball, but they couldn't. And I feel like that's going to be one of the keys. I believe Kentucky's quarterback, he had almost like 30 rushing yards, if I remember correctly. And I feel like that's a part of it, being able to not just our running backs, but I think that X factor maybe Jalen Milroe and his legs, him being able to be mobile on the field. Of course, the O-line has to hold up as well. But that was something. And then I noticed that Georgia, they had about 300 yards in the air against Clemson. But just like with Kentucky, they didn't start doing anything until the second half. So it has to be a team that can get in there and get an early lead and not just hold them like Clemson. Because to be honest, Clemson could have done better, but maybe it was, the level of talent as well is right. What I'm thinking.
And think about this. The thing about it, Brock Vandegrift was beat out by Carson Beck, right? Mm-hmm. That's equivalent to, let's say, Ty Simpson, him and Jalen Milroe are right here talent-wise. That's equivalent to Arkansas taking Ty Simpson, and we go to Arkansas and they take us down to the wire. You know what I'm saying? So we're more. Georgia was a much more talented team, but Kentucky took their backup quarterback and gave them the game of the season so far. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of things. A lot of outlines. Storylines we can get into.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Kentucky had about 15 more plays on the ground than Georgia, which is, I believe, is going to be a key for us. And then 13 of those were from their quarterback. That's why it didn't make sense why in our game against Wisconsin we had so many QB design runs. My thing is, you can do that a little bit, but it wasn't a need for that in that game. It's not that he,
Right, but what Marvin was saying, it's a reason. You know what I'm saying? It's a reason. We'll get into that. It's a reason.
I don't know, man. I get it.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, sure.
With Georgia, I will say this about Georgia: their the yards that they lose after getting sacked is a lot less than Alabama's, and I think that's been one reason why Georgia has been successful. Because yes, Carson Beck has been sacked one time this season. But I wrote this down. I meant to say that earlier. Do you know how many yards we've lost so far this season just on sacks alone? Alabama, 52 yards we've lost just on sacks. And we've played how many games? So, I think that's important to note that when we play teams that are going to have a stronger defensive line, our offensive line's got to step up and protect the pocket. But also, one thing Carson Beck does that Jalen doesn't is Carson falls forward. I don't know if you've noticed that in the last couple of seasons, but Jalen tends to fall back a lot, but Carson will try to flop at the very end and try to get a few yards back. So that's something we've got to improve on that I've seen Georgia do well is we really struggle with how many yards we get sacked. Georgia, not that much. So that's one thing that helped them. What are you going to say, Dan?
No, go ahead. I was saying Jalen is improving in that. I saw from the second half of the South Florida game, he started throwing the ball away, stopped taking unnecessary sacks, throwing the ball away. He made tremendous strides.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting? People, at least in the post-game show after we played Wisconsin, a lot of people have been asking like, oh, well, where is Kendrick Law? Where is Kobe Prentice? And honestly, I believe those guys, we've been saving them for our game against Georgia. Because I feel like with Ryan Williams, he's going to be double covered. They're going to try to, make him a non-factor in that game. But the CJ Duprees, the Jeremy Bernards, Emmanuel Henderson Jr., and I believe the veteran wide receivers, the Kobe Prentice and the Kendrick Law, I think this is going to be a game for them in particular. And also Robbie Oots, we need to have him out there blocking throughout the game. Like this guy, he literally said that he would prefer to block versus, catch the ball. So I'm like, why don't we have him out there blocking more? So it'll be interesting to see what we do with him. But I do think as far as our defense, we're going to have to pressure back. That's what Kentucky did, especially in that first half of that game. I mean, that guy was rattled. And honestly, that was probably their first true test. Because I hate to say it, but Clemson wasn't, they weren't really a threat, to be honest. But yeah. So.
And I don't know if y'all saw what Kirby Smart made a statement earlier this week about Kentucky and how their team overlooked it. And he said he tried to tell them that what you laughing at now?
No, go ahead, finish.
Go ahead.
No, that's deflected. You don't want to put that. Kirby is a great coach. Might be the greatest coach right now since Coach Saban retired. But I thought that was kind of, that's nothing Saban would say. You deflected to your team.
Good old Kirby.
You think Saban would say, "Hey, we overlooked"? No, he preaches that.
But honestly, Kirby
for the tin horn.
But think about it. Kirby is trying to deflect from the fact that just a few days ago, another one of their players were arrested. I mean, they're just trying to shift that conversation from what really needs to be talked about.
Well, apparently Uber should move their headquarters to Athens, Georgia, and they would make absolute killing. Their NIL deal should just be Uber.
I mean, but the thing is, I get that, like, you want to drive your car, you want to kind of, whatever, but it's like, you still have to be smart. Like, and that's why it keeps happening, because they're not dealing with it. But we'll let them do what they need to do. I definitely feel like our D line, because if you think about it, the Kentucky game with Georgia, the only touchdown that was scored by Georgia, I believe it was the only one, was, I believe, their third or fourth string running back, the Branson Robinson guy. So you just think about the different guys that Kentucky was able to shut down: Etienne, Frazier, Cash Jones. They had them on lock. They couldn't really do a whole lot, but then Robinson comes running out, and he gets the touchdown. So I think as far as our D line, we talked about LT Overton, which we'll get into him a little bit more later, but he's gonna have to have him a game. Our whole, like, look, we can't let our foot off the gas at all. Like, Georgia can't run up in Tuscaloosa thinking they're about to do something. Like, we just have to go ahead and just show that, no, like, they're not it. But we mentioned Alabama, and let's kind of talk about our bye week and what we should be focused on, because, we talk about the Georgia miscues and mistakes against, their first three opponents. But there are some things that I feel like we need to kind of focus on too. One of those things being getting healthy. That's going to be a big thing, but also limiting the distractions, of course, certain things being said. Of course, people still talking about the fact that we're not in the top three, which, I mean, right now, do rankings really matter anyway? So it's like, so it's like, Texas, y'all can celebrate all you want, ain't nobody think about, because y'all not used to it, so but we ain't gonna get into that. I ain't gonna troll them right now. But one thing that I wanted to mention, our O-line, they did do better in the game against Wisconsin. And I don't know if it's because we had Caden Proctor back, but it is worth noting that this week it was announced that our starters in that game on the O-line, they were actually named the Outland Trophy players of the week. So Booker, Proctor, Brailsford, Roberts, and Pritchard.
The first week we were at full strength.
Yeah. And we saw those penalties decrease as well. So honestly, this game is going to come down to coaching. We need to be healthy and do our part. But coaching is, because we got out coached in the game against South Florida. I mean, we just got out coached, and thank God it wasn't a Georgia or a Tennessee, But really quickly, Dan, what are your thoughts on what you feel like we need to focus on? Because I mean, we just played Georgia, like 9 months ago, basically. We know how to play them. We know how to beat them, and then a lot of their talent, a lot of their talent went to the draft. So
and this game's at home.
So
we have to go to Georgia.
What we got to do, the opportunity is going to be there. We got to capitalize on. We can't let them score touchdowns while we're getting field goals. Focus on that, stopping the run. You know what I'm saying? Just that should be our focus. Let's focus on stopping the run. If Carson Beck beats us through the air, we deserve to be. I feel better about it. But let's stop what they do best. You know what I'm saying? That's run the ball. Let's not turn over the ball. Let's not beat ourselves.
But Dan, when you said, so you're saying essentially we need to force him to throw the ball, because they haven't played a secondary like Alabama.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Let's do it.
I got two words in a minute.
You're coming into the season. He was the number one quarterback on Kyber's big board, right? Let's make him prove it. He had proved it so far against lesser talented teams.
Yep.
So let's make him prove it.
I agree.
Let's not let them beat us the way they beat Clemson, Tennessee Tech, Tennessee School of Blind, or whoever, and Kentucky.
Tennessee Tech had eight plays in the air. 8. They were 5 for 8. I'm like, y'all ain't have nobody to throw that ball to.
Right.
I mean, that was just embarrassing. That was straight up embarrassing. But I like that point. And essentially what we're saying is we need to force Beck to throw the ball. He hasn't had too much, I mean, they haven't really been challenged in that area because they ultimately haven't played a secondary like Alabama, and that just is what it is. Hannah, what are your thoughts?
2 words, 2 things we need to work on before next week. Super simple: penalties and fumbles. Okay. I'm going to give you some statistics that I have for this, because this is, and I'll say this: Alabama loses games that they shoot themselves in their own foot. Okay. Alabama very rarely loses games where they get outplayed. They usually lose games when they don't play their best and they don't capitalize, and other teams capitalize on their mistakes. Okay. So the 2 things I wanted to say is, right now, if my math is correct, Lord willing it is, okay, for right now, so far this season, we've averaged 73.12 penalties, yards in a game for penalties, okay? 73, that's almost an entire field, okay? Our opponents have around 52 yards of penalties per game, okay? So you're looking around there. So far this season, we've had 24 penalties for 219 yards. Our opponents so far have only had 19 penalties for 155 yards. Okay, that was the first thing I want to say. If we can stop getting penalties on ourselves, we can win any game this season. The second thing is fumbles. And I'm not just blaming Jalen Hurts here. I'm just saying in general, ball security has got to be a focus in practice. It's a whole team-wide issue. The things I wanted to say: our opponents have only had 5 fumbles, okay? And we've had 6. And that has got to change. We cannot, because a team like Georgia will capitalize on any mistake we make. Okay, we can kind of get away with it with Michigan, because we can make a mistake and then we were really good on defense, and then Michigan would have to, not Michigan, good Lord, Wisconsin, see, look at me. Wisconsin would end up punting the ball. Okay, we would get the ball back. Not a big deal. Georgia will find any single loophole to capitalize. So for me, the 2 things we've got to work on are penalties, which we did better this week. Like I said, with our front line, loved them, great job. But there were still a few key mistakes we made last week that if we made against Georgia, we would not have had the same outcome. And then fumbling. If we can just secure the ball, even in chaotic situations, that's going to be something that I think we will see. If we fix the fundamentals, I think we're going to see an Alabama team who can easily make it back to the championship game.
Oh, yeah, because we went in the Natty this year. I mean, we've been calling and we're going to keep calling. I don't care what y'all got to say in the comments about that. I saw Darius. It looked like we unblocked Darius. But I accept your apology, Darius. I know that you usually, you got something personal against Milroe. You had it since last year. I don't know if you know him personally or what your issue is with him, but just no Milroe hate in the comments, because we don't really want to hear all that tonight. Now, we did mention LT Overton, and I wanted to bring him up because, Coach Womack, he had some really positive things to say about him. And even after A-Day, there was a lot of positive comments regarding LT Overton. And just for those who may not be as familiar with him, so he's a junior. This is his first year actually playing at Alabama. He played at Texas A&M for 2 years. He's originally from Milton, Georgia. He didn't want to go to Georgia, but he wanted to come to Alabama. So, I mean, that right there speaks volumes. But anywho, he feels more developed at Alabama. He didn't get the level of development that I think anticipated when he was at Texas A&M. I mean, they had 2 seasons to develop him and they couldn't really do anything with him. But, he's where he's supposed to be. We talked about tackles. He had a great performance in our game against Wisconsin, a total of 6 tackles. I think he had a forced fumble. I mean, he really showed up and showed out. So the question is, should we expect to hear his name? Yeah. I mean, he really showed up and showed out. And so the question is, should we anticipate seeing his name in the running for any awards, whether that's the Outland Award? I believe the last defensive player that we had to win, that was Quinnen Williams in 2018. The Bednarik Award, the last Alabama player that we had to win, that one was Will Anderson in 2022. And then we had other guys like Jonathan Allen and I think Minka Fitzpatrick. They won it in the past. And then the Nagurski Award. So the last Alabama defensive player that won that was Will Anderson in 2021 and 2022. So really quickly, Hannah, any of those kind of resonate? Do you feel like, it may be more, or those are going to be something up that?
Yeah. I think he'll be in the running for absolutely all of those. Yeah. And the reason I say this is the number he's wearing, I love it. Ryan Anderson's old number. All right. Like, I think that, let me go back. Let me just pause the button. One thing that I've seen from Overton is he was not, what's the word? Like, I'm blanking all of a sudden. I'm having an old lady brain fart. He was not developed well. Right. And Womack has done an incredible job producing so much talent that was in this guy the whole time that he didn't know was there. Okay. And I think when
Freddie
we
Roach
saw him
well.
do what?
Coach wrote Freddie Roach as well.
Yep. And I think when you look at where this team was and where we are now, I think LT Overton was the missing puzzle piece. I really do. Because he's aggressive, he's fast, and he's a threat. And I tell you right now, Wisconsin's quarterback had no idea he was coming. I mean, that lit me up. I love seeing him sack, right? But I think we've been missing a guy like this on defense for a very long time. He kind of reminds me, not exactly the same size, so when I say this, but Deron Payne. Deron Payne was that very feisty guy off the defensive line. And I think LT Overton can be the guy that brings this Alabama defense back to where it needs to be. Because if he can play this way against Georgia, I wouldn't be surprised if LT Overton has another fantastic game, maybe has 2 sacks on Beck. But yes, I think that, there could be more. But
yeah.
He has so much potential, and the best part about it is we're seeing this early in the season. Sometimes it's midway through the season before we see guys perform like this, and he's just getting better each game. So I'm here for it, and Dan is so happy.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on LT? Are you excited? Do you feel like we're getting more than what we anticipated when we got LT to come to Alabama? And then do we feel like his name is going to be in the running for those awards?
Right. I want to let the chat know that we got a few questions. I'm not ignoring y'all. We're going to answer them at the end of the show. So y'all stay tuned. We're going to answer them at the end of the show. I got a couple of good ones here I want to answer.
Look, one of the questions was, could we block Chris? Because I guess they're getting tired of Chris. Look, Chris, you might be getting blocked soon. I don't know. But what are your thoughts on LT?
Yes.
How are you feeling right now?
I'm very excited about LT Overton and us being able to, people were frustrated with Freddie Roach at the first few years, you know what I'm saying? But it wasn't his guys, you know what I'm saying? Now Freddie Roach is getting his guys, he's developing his guys, the guys that been in the system they're developing. When you get, we changed schemes, went to Pete Golden, and it was different, we used the 2 gap and everything, but when we got a different defense coordinator last year, and Coach Roach, you saw the defensive line start improving last year. Yeah, it was a mess under Pete Golden. Yeah, and back to LT Overton, uber talented guy, but there's one guy that makes everything happen on the Alabama defensive line. He just doesn't get recognized. This is what you got to have to make things happen. We got a nose guard, that makes things happen. We'll talk about him, but I'm gonna talk. We got a nose guard that makes it happen. In Tim Keenan. He has as much say about what goes on the interior of that defensive line as anybody. But now we got somebody beside him that can benefit from that and capitalize on that, and that is LT Overton. We went and we snagged him. Texas A&M fumbled this guy to us. Yeah, that's the guy we got. We've had guys like that on the outside, and a lot of them, we've missing a dominant nose tackle, since Deron Payne. Now Tim Keenan is becoming that guy. So LT Overton is he can get after the quarterback. He can stop the run. Yeah, he's a every down lineman. He doesn't have to come out on passing downs, running down. He's an every down guy. Yeah. That can make things happen, and he's gonna reap the benefits. He's gonna have a tremendous. Yes, at the end of the year, in short, I expect his name to be called on the first day in the NFL draft.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited for him.
I think if there's one player that if I stood up against, not like me, but like as a player, I would literally poop my pants, it would be Keenan. He is.
I believe we had Keenan on
guy.
The Bama Center yesterday, right?
Yeah,
like that's right.
Anyone, like how much does he weigh? Like 330 or something? Like
I think he's down to like 320, 350.
He's a big boy. I mean,
he's a fire plug. He's short with it. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
He's a fire plug. What we used to call him.
Really quickly, because I think you mentioned it, Dan. Thank you for the reminder. Be sure to add any questions that you have, because we do have the Q&A segment coming up shortly. So there were a few that we saw. Go ahead and add any other questions that you have, especially going into. I saw LaPrentice asked, "Have we ever heard of that song, 'The Devil Went Down to Georgia'?" I mean, I don't know if we're going to display that one, but go ahead and drop your questions in the chat, and then we'll address those shortly. But we wanted to kind of talk about. We wanted to quickly talk about the other SEC teams. I know that not everyone has played an SEC opponent just yet. Like, of course, we haven't. Georgia will be the first this season. But just kind of, listing them from best to worst, or just in our opinions. To be honest, I mean, it's only a few that I would say are, the best right now. So, of course, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Texas. I mean, those are what I would call the best in the SEC. The mid, I would kind of say Missouri, LSU, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and South Carolina. Surprisingly, South Carolina, they did their thing a little bit against LSU, so we'll see. But then the worst would be basically Florida, Auburn, and everybody else. So Auburn, we got to shout you out as being one of the worst teams. Like, every year, y'all just horrible. Like, I could just care less about a W that I see on their schedule, because it means nothing, because they're still one of the worst teams in the nation.
Now,
so
I'm gonna be fair. We ain't gonna talk about Auburn like that. Now, I put Auburn just above Florida right now.
But they're still one of the worst, just better than Florida.
Well, Hank Brown's a good quarterback. I'll tell you that right now.
That's hilarious. I mean, what are y'all thoughts? Dan, I'll start with you on this one. I have my best, mid, and worst. Did you agree with that, or would you kind of put?
I agree 100%, 100% with that.
The mid and the worst.
Where did you have LSU?
I had LSU as a mid. I mean, they probably won't like that, but I'm just like, y'all played, y'all up there celebrating y'all win against South Carolina. Y'all just got beat up by USC. Like, what?
I don't think they should be
right
in the top
now. You got
25.
Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and Texas.
That's the top four for sure.
Yeah.
I would put. Who did you have? Mizzou,
Missouri,
Arkansas.
Oklahoma.
Definitely give Ole Miss some love, but until Lane Kiffin had that signature.
Okay, so Ole Miss, Mizzou, Oklahoma. I would probably pick Arkansas over LSU for mid.
I wouldn't. LSU went into South Carolina in a hostile environment. They deserve to be in there over there. Yeah.
I think they were embarrassed because of that loss against USC. But I don't know.
I mean, but
USC is a ranked team, ranked opponent.
I don't think LSU should have won that game. I mean, I know they did, but I mean,
we know that. Yeah, that's a whole different thing.
But yes. But my point, I mean, it was so bad that even ESPN has spoken about that game. So I
mean, honestly, what were the expectations of South Carolina this year? Like, I hate to talk about them like that, but no one really expected them to be. No one expected them to hang with an LSU the way that they did, even though they were at South Carolina. So you got to give them.
And the game was, I believe, I hate to get into all that, but I think the game was affected by the It was. They cheat. They took I'm
points
not a conspiracy
away.
theorist. It was one of those Bama at Tennessee type of things. It was that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, I'm sure we'll see.
Let me just put it to you this way. We forget who was the team that South Carolina played last week.
LSU.
No, I mean 2 weeks ago. Sorry.
It was Kentucky.
Yeah. And they smoked Kentucky on the road.
Right.
So I think this is another point
I want to make. Good point. I see what you're getting at.
Is actually a really good team.
Right.
That we underestimated this season.
Right.
That's and see, I look at where teams are and where I think they're going. I don't look at where they've come from. So that's why I have LSU kind of going down and South Carolina going up, because I think South Carolina is going to be that team that we're like, oh wow, like they're a lot better than we thought, and then we're looking at LSU and like, man, like. Because I said way long time ago, how LSU plays game one is going to project how they play the entire season. And so far, it looks like, and they should be 1-2 right now, not 2-1. That's just the reality.
Yeah. Well, before we address any questions, I do want to give a shout out again to our sponsor, WhitwillSports.com. We mentioned them earlier just to kind of throw out there that we had the giveaway tonight, but I wanted to mention them again just in case people joined a little late. So we are doing a giveaway tonight, the title towel from Whitwell Sports. So basically, we had asked that everyone is engaged in the chat, and we were going to pick a top fan, and then our moderator is essentially going to select whoever the top fan is in the chat, and then you have to drop your email address and you'll get your title towel in preparation for, I don't know if you'll be able to get it before the game against Georgia, but you'll get it sometime in the near future. Now Justin, do we have any questions geared up? Let's see. Okay, I see Toughest Nails. What will we see differently against UGA's play calling? More run or pass? To me, look, we better see more run. Like, we gotta see more running. And I feel like just from the, I'm not sure, Toughest Nails, if you were here when maybe earlier in the show, but we were doing a breakdown of some of the stats between Georgia and Clemson and Kentucky and Tennessee Tech. And one of the things that we noticed between those games is that with Clemson and Tennessee Tech, their QB had negative rushing yards. And I personally believe that Jalen Milroe, he's going to be a huge factor in this game. I mean, he is by far the best athlete on the team, so you have him plus these like amazing running backs that we have. I mean, hands down, you can line them up against any D line and we're going to get some yards on that field. So I believe it's going to be the run, but I do think that we need to open up the playbook more with the passing. And that's when we're going to see those guys that we keep asking about, the Kobe Prentice, the Kendrick Law. Everybody's been asking where they've been at. I don't think it's on them. I think it's more so, maybe whoever is open at that time. But good question.
Are they asking? How are they asking? What will we see differently against Georgia's play calling? More run?
I think they're asking we see more run or more passing. I think it's going to be both, but I think it's
with Georgia or with us.
They're asking against Georgia. That's how I'm reading it. They're asking against Georgia? Are we going to have? That's how I'm interpreting the question.
Okay, so I agree. I wasn't sure. I was kind of not.
Yeah,
I was like, are they asking if they're going to play? I mean, I'll just say this: Georgia's a great team to run the ball against. So if we can execute a running game, I mean, look how it went for Kentucky, and we need to get a few games in our belt running the dang ball.
Yeah, let me take this one. In short, we don't know. Kirby is a very brilliant coach. Did not get that misconstrued, but he knows that
he
can't attack this Bama. It's a completely different defense. He can't attack this particular Bama defense the same way he did Nick Saban's defense. He knows this, but me knowing Kirby, he's going to try to see if he can hit us with the run first. Against us, against Nick Saban, he knew to come out with a little trick play, little tunnel screens, little easy throws for his quarterback. He knew that to make simple throws, simple reads, the Brock Bowers. He doesn't have a Brock Bowers anymore. As much as you try to make Oscar Delp or Brock Bowers, you can't do it.
And not the way he chewed Delk out on that side.
He's finding that out now against lesser talent.
Exactly.
Against lesser talent. He's finding that out now. Trust me, Kirby is going to come out with some wrinkles. We don't know. And that's why he is where he is right now. We don't know, in short.
Yeah. No, I agree. Hopefully we answered that question the way you intended it, Toughest Nails. And then it looks like we have a winner for our giveaway tonight. So shout out to Dexter Wright. Thank you for being so active in the chat tonight. You have won a free title towel from Whitwell Sports. We talk about them every episode. So in order to be able to get it or to retrieve it, we ask that you send an email to Justin Riley at theBamaStandard.com. That's JUSTINRILEY at theBamaStandard.com. Just send them an email with your information. And and then I guess, Justin, you'll have to make sure that it's no random that's trying to basically take credit for it and, try to get them a free title towel. So we shall see. All right. Well, congratulations to you. Another question from James Knox. Shout out to James. As everyone is learning the staff, does anyone get the feeling that our staff was confident enough last season to have preliminary scouting of Kirby as a possible CFP opponent while at what?
At Washington.
At Washington.
Yeah, Washington.
As far as the staff.
DeBoer.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
I mean,
We'll
but they
find
have
out.
to. They got to.
But he ain't no it ain't no Connor Stallions going on with him. You know,
Yeah,
he's
true.
kind of
true.
like let's not, you know, we don't have chopped liver on our sideline. Trust me, Coach DeBoer has gotten where he's gotten, you know, by being an excellent coach, which he is, an excellent coach, game planner. You know, he's more like Coach Saban. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Very strategic.
Well,
you know what I'm saying? That's why he don't have many losses. That's why it's so confusing about that comment that Kirby Smart made. The team was focused more, looking past the, you know, that's on you, Coach. If you truly believe that, Coach DeBoer, Coach Saban, they're similar into, hey, you take that's the Bama standard. You know, take what's in front of you. Be where your feet are. You know, you heard that term a lot, right? Be where your feet are. That's what we mean by that. You know, be where your feet are. We you know, we went and handled business in Madison. We didn't handle it. You know, we were on the road too, just like them. Our guys were looking forward to Georgia, right?
Yeah. So, I hope not with the way that turned. I mean, even though Van Dyke didn't play, I still feel like we showed up against Wisconsin to play.
Their backup quarterback was he wasn't, you know, he wasn't no lowly rated quarterback. He was a very good quarterback coming in, and I was like, oh, he's a better passer than Tyler Van Dyke. True. Yeah, so it ain't like, you know, they can say that, but you know, things happen, you know. But Georgia, you know, Kentucky had your quarterback. You know, your backup quarterback.
True. Yeah. I remember they mentioned that.
Making excuses, and you know, it's you know what the opposite of excuse is?
What?
I tell it to my crew all the time. The opposite of an excuse is a result. You know what I'm saying? Anybody that doesn't have a result, they have 1,000 excuses.
Yeah.
You're gonna have an excuse or results. That's it.
I like that. Hey, since you got Brian Denny in your background, hey, I don't know, you might need to go up in that locker room and put that on a banner or something.
Yeah, shout out to the boss man and everything. I'm a 50-year-old with an 80-year-old soul. So they were pulling their hair trying to show me how to do this. You know what I'm saying? I just got on social media last, you know, we're blowing up final whistle, you know, and they in the chat, y'all make sure y'all follow me. I'm up to 411 followers as I look.
Man, look, we not giving socials yet. Don't follow him. Right. Don't follow him on nothing. We haven't given any social media. Follow your behind to Bryant Denny, which is in your background. Shout out to
here.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
I'm in the booth. You know, my office is next to Coach Saban.
You're in the founder's box.
Yeah, I'm right here, Coach. I'll get with Coach. We'll talk. We'll chat it up. I gotta hurry up. We gotta, you know, we got dinner together later on.
Okay. Question. I know he addressed this person. I don't know if it's a male or female, but they said, Dan, would you say who will be the most impactful defensive player? I'm going to toss that to Hannah first, and then I'll toss it to you.
All right. I'm assuming he's talking about in
our game against Georgia. Yeah.
It depends on how they attack us. This is where I think most impactful. That's tricky. You know, it's going to start with Tim Keenan, you know, but how Jihaad Campbell and Deontay Lawson, if they're able to fill the run lanes, you know, Keon Sabb, Malachi Moore, it can go a whole lot of ways. You know, I'm expecting all of them to bring their best game, you know. So the most impactful, if I just have to throw a name out there, if we can get them on passing downs, I'm going to say LT Overton.
Okay, you got LT. Okay. Hannah, who would you say will be the most impactful defensive player in our game against Georgia?
I was going to say LT Overton. So
you can say him. Yeah, no, you can. Yeah, okay. So y'all are both going with LT. Okay. I would say, because I feel like they're going to rely more. I think it depends on who we feel, what they're going to strategically rely on more. And I believe that Carson knows not to throw that ball in our secondary. So they're going to rely a little bit more on their running game. I would say y'all are saying LT. I'm going to go with Jihaad Campbell. I'm going to go with Jihaad. He's been consistent in every game. And I feel like it's going to be one of those guys. It's going to be one of those guys closer to it could even be someone at Wolf. It could be someone at that Wolf. So even like Quay Robinson, Russaw, Keanu, one of these guys who's fast off the edge, because I believe one of the keys, we cannot allow Beck to run that ball. He had like we just cannot. So we need someone either pressuring him, or it's going to be one of the linemen, one of the linebackers who can stop the run. So it's going to be done up front, because I don't think that they're going to have enough. I mean, they could throw that ball again in our secondary if they want to, but I wouldn't suggest that. Any other questions that we want to take? Man, Edwards, shout out to Man. Chris Williams is getting cocky again. They haven't lost to a mid-major team in a few weeks. Yeah, that's the thing. Auburn, like, okay, so y'all arrogant now. Just 2 weeks ago, y'all were crying. I know, 4 interceptions against Cal, and now you in the chat acting like y'all somebody. Like, sir, please have a seat at the kiddies table with your Lunchable, because you can't sit with the grown-ups. Like, you can't sit with the winners. Y'all are mid at best, and you really ain't that either. Like, y'all are lucky to even be in this chat right now. Like, please don't.
Go troll Kentucky or South Carolina or Vanderbilt or something.
I know. They love Alabama. Ugh, they're just so disgusting. Like, everything about Auburn is horrific. Like, it's literally Auburn is a verb. I'm telling y'all, they need to put Auburn in the dictionary as a verb. It's what you do. Auburn means fail. Like, that's all they do is fail. Like, I'm so tired of them. Okay, shout out to Linda P. How many yards do y'all think? Huh?
I'm saying this is a good question. We touched on this last night. It was asked last night. So
Jam will have. Okay, I'm gonna say I believe he'll have at least. I'll give him, because Milroe is probably gonna have the second or third highest. I feel like Jam would probably have. I'm gonna give him like maybe 95. I'll give him like 95. Hannah, what are your thoughts?
I'm just letting y'all have fun. Let's see. I'll go 123.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
We all were unanimous last night that the question was, do you think if I think it was to the aspect of would somebody have 100 yards? The most likely, Jalen Milroe can very well do it. But I think our game of playing, our offense is very explosive. We didn't hit, so we don't know. Our offense has been, quick strike. But it may work against Georgia, it may not. So if we got them, we don't know, can we matriculate down the field? Kirby is going to try to take something away. We don't know what he's going to do. So it's a good question. So I don't think he can get 100 yards because of two things. It's because of our workload. We got him, Justice Haynes, and Milroe is going to take away some of the rushing yards.
Mm-hmm. So that's why I didn't say 100.
It's a three-headed attack, and you think
exactly.
When was the last time we had a running back rush for over 100 yards against Georgia?
Well,
so and Jalen Milroe, if anybody do it, it's Jalen Milroe. You know what I'm saying? I think the last time we had that happen, I don't think Kirby was coaching. I think it was Eddie Lacy. I think in that game, but I may be wrong, but I don't think. But we obviously, teams have had success running against Georgia.
We had success running against them in the SEC championship last year.
I said they've given up just as much rushing as they have rushed for. I think it was pretty even. Like a 10-yard difference. So I think we got a play caller, y'all. We got a play caller on offense. We got a coach. We got a coach that can scheme up some stuff. We haven't seen what we can do.
I mean, wasn't there a question last week? Have we seen the playbook actually open just yet? That's I think. Exactly. And I like what we all said. I think we all, even Hannah, we all said the same thing about Jam. The way they're gonna split up the running.
That's right. We're gonna have Milroe running against Georgia, but the scheming, the workload, I don't know. I'm gonna tell you, the way he will have over 100 yards, he's gonna break a long run, which we haven't seen that too much against Georgia yet, right? But if anybody can do it, Jalen Milroe can do it.
Yep.
Damian Harris had 152 yards in 2020 against Georgia.
Really?
That would have been that would have been the SEC championship because we played
October 17th. We played on October 17th in 2020.
2020.
Oh yeah, because that would have been the COVID year.
Yep. And Damian Harris rushed for 152 yards.
No,
but that would have been a regular season game though. So
yeah,
but think about that. Najee Harris, the championship team. Najee Harris was on the team. He the 2020, right?
No, that's what I meant. Najee Harris. Sorry, I meant Najee, not Damian.
Oh, okay.
Najee Harris had 152 yards for against Georgia.
Maybe that COVID year, we won't really count that. We'll give it that COVID.
I mean, we gonna count that natty that we won that COVID year.
Oh, I'm just saying that was the last time we rushed for over 100 yards against Georgia.
Yeah. Now I will say though, because I see people putting score predictions. Hold your predictions because next week we're gonna do a deeper dive. While y'all delete my profanity comments because we want to see all that. But we're gonna do a deeper dive into the players. We're gonna pick a few players. We're gonna do this next week though, leading up to the game from Georgia and Alabama, who we believe will be the impact players. But then we'll do the score predictions next week. So because we kind of want to get the an update on the injury report as well. So that's gonna kind of play into things. But before we end things here, go ahead and hit that like button if you haven't already. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. And then we do have Teague's Take tonight at 8:15 Central Standard Time. He's actually going to have Roman Harper on as a guest, so be sure to check it out. 8:15 Central Standard Time right here on the Bama Standard Network. And then Sunday we have Sunday Nights Talking Bama with JB and Josh Tucker at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then really quickly, do y'all have any other shows that you want to promote or any social media? Hannah, do you have any that you want to mention?
Yeah, you can follow me on X at the UA Sign Girl. You can follow me on Facebook find me on Facebook, the same name. And then we have the show on Monday. I think we're not doing it on Fridays anymore because it's with high school football and all that. But Mondays, you can catch us at 7 p.m. Central, right here on the Bama Standard.
Wait, which one? That's the
opening kickoff.
Opening
kickoff.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, good Lord, I should know this. It's the opening kickoff. Listen, I was so amped for Monday show, and we got to work late, and then I had double flat tire, not one but two.
Are y'all thinking to move Fridays to Thursday, perhaps, or are you just thinking about just getting rid of?
Talk to guys, but
okay.
I mean, it may just be during this season. Like it may just be as the opening kick. Thank you. Yeah, I don't even know the unknown name. But I think maybe once it's through fall's really hard on Friday night because that's high school football.
High school, yeah.
And if you live in a state like Alabama, where the town closes to have high school football, then yeah. But I think once we're through high school, through fall, I think we should do a Monday, Friday show.
Yeah. And Monday is a good day too. Coming off of the new rankings and all the good stuff, at least for AP poll. And
that's with me, Petty, and Smoke. That's at 7 p.m.
Yeah. Central Standard Time. Okay.
Yep.
And then Dan, any other shows and any social media?
Of course, you can catch this pretty face. I'm coming up, y'all. I got, I'm in brand Denny now. I got
offered a job and everything.
Yeah, I'm getting sophisticated. They get me in the game. I don't know if y'all can see that. I don't know. It's a little ring light, whatever. You see the pretty face more. Next, I'm gonna get me a little makeup artist and everything. But catch me on Tuesday nights, right here on this very channel, The Final Whistle, with my pack of Avengers. Wednesday nights, right here, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central, the Clemson Dynasty, right here on this channel. Catch me on every other game on the Alabama post-game show on Saturdays, immediately following the game. And you catch me on social media, y'all. That's right. You can catch Final Whistle Dan on social media. I finally get to see it on X.
Oh, gosh.
At the Final Whistle Dan. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get that. What you call that thing? Is it blue check? Is that it?
You trying to get verified?
That there. Yeah, that there.
The blue check.
That right there. They told me I got to get to that. I need y'all's help. Y'all are the only friends I got.
Oh gosh. You might need to reach out to Elon for that check. All right. Well, this is my only show, I guess, right now on the Bama Standard Network. But you can catch me on the post-game shows. Of course, this is a bye week, but next week. And then you can find me on Instagram at beauty_of_intelligence. Every single word, every single letter. Don't miss a letter. And without further ado, like I said, next week, be sure to join because we're going to dive deeper into some of the players on both sides, Alabama and Georgia. We're going to have our score predictions. We'll have more of it, I guess, like an injury report update, because that's going to be critical for this upcoming game. And yeah, be sure to shout out to Linda. I love the Bama Standard shows, but this one is my favorite. Thank you so much. And thank you again for that birthday super chat last week. really appreciate. I appreciate all the super chats though, because y'all don't have to give. You really don't. And so we really appreciate, those who do. And yeah, be sure to catch us next week, same time, same place. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, Blitz, Hammer Blitz. I'm coming, Coach.